On today's Locked On Bucks, we dig into tonight's matchup with the Lakers. Are the Bucks continuing to catch a bit of a break here before the lead up to the tough part of the schedule? Also, revisit a conversation we've had for a couple of days now. Who's the third scorer, and is he currently missing? We'll get into that conversation coming up after this on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day and for checking out the Locked On Bucks newsletter. If you have not done so yet, you can still sign up for free at lockedondaily.com and get your day started with the all-new free Locked On Bucks newsletter. Today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Camille, a big one tonight against the Los Angeles Lakers, who are in town as we speak. The Bucks did not get any help in the scoreboard last night. On the scoreboard, the New York Knicks win in overtime on a Mikal Bridges three-pointer. So we've talked about it before, but I think that door is closed. The Knicks now have 17 games left. You have to outplay them by 6 games in those 17 games. So they're in a dogfight. We shouldn't even look ahead to the Knicks because of the dogfight you're currently in with the Pistons and the Pacers. But the Lakers come into town. At one point, they were the 2 seed. They're down to 4 now, but there's a lot of fluid activity in the Western Conference standings, but we knew LeBron James was not going to play, and it's still a strong chance he's not going to play in that game next Thursday either. But the most recent injury report for the Lakers also has Luka Doncic listed as questionable with an ankle issue. Now, we've seen Giannis appear as questionable on the injury report a couple of times recently here and still play, so this is by no means a guarantee that, hey, there's no Luka Doncic, or even a good chance there's no Luka Doncic. But, I mean, suddenly we keep pointing to the win percentage of the opponents and how difficult the Bucks record is or schedule is. But suddenly you're starting to get some of these instances pop up where, oh, this player's out and this player's out. And these are the games, not to sound like a broken record. I mean, you need to expect to win this game with no LeBron James as is, but especially if there's no Luka Doncic, Bucks need this game with what's in front of them.
They truly do. And we have seen at times, and we've heard from other NBA players mention before, that sometimes when you look across the court and you don't see a lot of the guys you expect to play against, your focus level can change a little bit because it's like, LeBron's not out there, or possibly Luka's not out there. And the Bucks are going to have to make sure that they still attack this game like they're a desperate team looking to get that victory. Like, you cannot overlook who's in front of you just because some of the stars are out. We watched the Bucks lose to the LeBron-less Lakers last year. And this time, they have Luka. If he does play, if he does not play, it's still a game, like you said, that you need to win. You cannot overlook this team just because of who's not playing. In addition to Luka being questionable and LeBron being out, we know that Jackson Hayes is out, Maxi Kleber is out, Rui Hachimura is out. So, they are going to
size.
Yeah, and Bronny James, if you care about that. But this is a Lakers team that the Bucks have to beat. It does not matter who's lacing them up in the jersey. Entertainment value wise, disappointing. I always love seeing the LeBron versus Giannis matchups. Love seeing Luka, but as we've mentioned multiple times, and we'll talk a bit more about as the show goes on, with what you have in front of you, take care of tonight's game. That Pacers game left a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouth. I know the players can't be happy to lose a game like that the last second. And it's the next game now. You move on. So go out there and get this win tonight.
The Lakers have not played since Monday.
Yep.
Yeah, so 2 days off for the Lakers here. And that last game was a loss to the Brooklyn Nets. And their starting 5 in that game was Gabe Vincent, who's been resurrected in the last week or so. Gabe Vincent, Luka Doncic, Dalton Connect, Austin Reeves, and Alex Len. their starting lineup in that game. Only played basically 8 deep with Vando coming off the bench and Jared Vanderbilt, that is. Trey Jemison seeing some playing time because of the lack of bigs that they have. And Jordan Goodwin played 24 minutes. So we don't expect much of a change to that group tonight. I mean, again, Luka Doncic, I believe, is going to play, but still, we just read through those starters. It's a home game. Mm-hmm. It picks up big time. We'll touch on, again, that game Saturday, but you know me and my feeling of must-win games, but this is walking right up to the line of, you got to win this game with the schedule that's left out there. And we talked about the Bucks dropping a little bit in toughest remaining schedule. They're down to 9th overall now. And we mentioned on the last show, the Pistons have surpassed them for most difficult schedule in the Eastern Conference. I do find it funny, though, Camille, that if you got a tankathon, they do all the math for you, and they'll show you what games does this team have remaining that we deem the toughest and the easiest. For the Lakers, their final tough game or opponent listed is one game with the Indiana Pacers, opposed to laying out. They got 2 games with the Bucks, who have an identical record to the Indiana Pacers.
That's how it goes. I mean, even if you look at like the Pistons, one thing for the Bucks is that they don't have to play themselves. So we've talked about where they are in the standings, 36-28, same record as the Pacers right now, which again is part of what makes that game on Saturday so big. But not overlooking what you have in front of you tonight on Thursday, I'm got to take care of business there. And for the Bucks, just want to see some cleaner execution as well along the way. We talked about that a bit from that Pacers loss and just how they bounce back from that. This is a 3-game losing streak now for the Milwaukee Bucks after coming out of the All-Star break, 7-1, playing some pretty good ball, getting a lot of clutch basketball out of the All-Star break, which we didn't see much of prior to the break. So, when you look around the league and where everybody's at, we talk a lot about how this time of the season is when things really start to ramp up. You want to start playing your best basketball at this time, and you can only play who's in front of you. But if you look in that rearview mirror, and I know a lot of players say like they don't really care about the standings and what's going on, because what's most important is trying to be healthy come playoff time. But understanding that you and the Pacers have the same record, the Pistons are right behind you. Like if you look at games behind, 18.5 for the Bucks, for the Pacers, and for the Pistons, even though the Pistons currently have one more loss. You have the Hawks, who I think might be a little bit too far behind, but they are having a little win streak of their own. So you got to continue to keep the pressure up on yourself and continue getting those wins along the way, because the way the standings are shaking out, I could see this season ending a bit like last year, where you don't really know some of the standings until the last day of the season because everything's in flux and teams are so close together.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to rule out the Knicks because of the Bucks' proximity to them, I do think we can rule out the Bucks sliding into the play-in tournament. You're still 6 games up in the loss column on the Hawks. You got 1 game left against Atlanta where you, I believe, can secure the tiebreaker with a win in that game. So it is going to be 4, 5, or 6. I feel very strongly in saying for the Bucks. And now it's just ending the 3-game losing streak. Their third this long so far this season. We've talked quite a bit about, look, you need something beyond Giannis and Dame. You need some consistency in that third role. So I do want to explore that a bit more, and whether or not the answer is right in front of us, but we're just failing to acknowledge it because that player isn't on the floor. So we'll get into that conversation coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you can just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. When you start using Monarch, you'll realize just how much you're spending on things like food delivery. And now your budget can be even smarter and save you even more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even long-term goal planning. Managing money with your partner is also smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA to get half off your first year. So we've talked quite a bit about, and I don't even want to overstate, at least at the time of the trade, what you were getting from Chris Middleton and probably where he is at this stage in his career. Like, third scorer, sure, but it wasn't like we can romanticize over what Chris Middleton did in the playoffs, and we should. That's not what we were seeing so far. Or you would see it once every handful of games from him. So that kind of remains the issue. And we keep talking about, man, would you have believed before the season if we told you the Bucks are routinely going to be one of the 10 best defenses in the league, but middle of the pack or worse on offense? When we get into things like that, you can slowly see the reason why. And they continue now more than ever to try to find that consistent third scorer, because you know how defenses are going to collapse on Giannis, and teams that have the personnel, what they're going to do to say, let's take Damian Lillard out of this. So you just have to find that tertiary scorer. And as we've mentioned, it doesn't have to be the same guy night to night. You just need a group you feel confident in. I feel like we've mentioned this every other show for the last 2 weeks here. And you and I were talking yesterday and just wondered, well, wait a minute. Are we overlooking the fact that Bobby Portis is 12 games into the suspension now? So right around the time this conversation started, Bobby Portis wasn't on the floor. Am I trying to say that Bobby Portis is like the third scorer on a team and like replacing what Chris Middleton gave you in the playoffs last year? No, but I think we know what to expect from Bobby Portis. And when we talk about some of those minutes where you just need offense to come, like, that's a pretty big absence that I don't think we've done a good enough job addressing and saying, oh, by the way, this guy's gone.
And I think that's truly fair to point out, because even if you look at the numbers prior to the trade deadline, when Chris Middleton was still on the squad, Bobby Portis was the third leading scorer by average on the Bucks, averaging about 13.6 points, right behind Giannis at 31.8 and Dame at 25.1. So Bobby was already coming into the game, and he was like the third leading scorer, even though he wasn't tasked with being the third scorer on the team. It's part of the nickname, Bobby Buckets. And a lot of the conversations around Bobby Portis, like, we know Bobby is not a perfect player, but he can do things that can benefit your team. Talk about the rebounding that we saw during the stretch of the games when he was taking time away to be with his family after the passing of his grandmother. And you saw how rebounding was a glaring issue when Bobby Portis wasn't out there. And now you see this team post-trade deadline with the new additions. Rebounding is necessarily as big of a problem as it was during that time when there was no Bobby Portis. But again, just being able to have another scoring option, because as we've talked about, the Bucks don't need it to be the same guy every single night that comes out like, hey, I'm the third scorer tonight. Every game it can be different, but you just need someone to step up every game to do that. And Bobby Portis is somebody who, for all the flaws one might point in his game, he is somebody who can go out there and get you, 13, 14 points. And some nights, if he's really hot, he might be able to push that up near 20 points in a game. So I think Bobby is somebody who is important to this team, especially now without the Chris Middleton there, because prior I was wondering, like, is Bobby Portis' role still as necessary on this team? Because when Bobby was brought in, the Bucks were a more defensive focused team. So being able to have somebody who can count on for some instant offense was a benefit. And then as the team identity shifted a little bit after the Dame trade initially, where it was more offense, not as much defense, it was like, well, does Bobby still fit in that? Because now you need more defense. And then you see how this team has been playing this year, where the defense has been outpacing the offense, even though there are certain things the defense can continue to work on along the way here. But again, the question comes back to now, can we get some more of that offense? And Bobby Portis is somebody who I think can come back in and play a really crucial role for this Bucks team with his scoring ability and his rebounding. So I think the Bucks are missing Bobby Portis, and when he comes back, he is going to give them something that they need.
Yeah, I mean, they have a 117 offensive rating in the minutes that Bobby Portis has been on the floor. And I mean, I think we're both aware of defense is where the questions lie with Bobby Portis. To your point, though, last year, you look at guys like Bobby and Malik Beasley, and the Bucks were just constructed one way, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to be elite if you're a one-way player at that skill set, and they're both very good at that side of the ball. You saw the defense collapse. So I still think it remains to be seen what the usage is and what the role is in the playoffs, but I think you at least feel better about the supporting cast and the defensive help that you've surrounded guys like a Bobby Portis and for that matter, Damian Lillard with as well in the starting lineup. Even other options that the Bucks have that they have not had before, playing somebody like a Jericho Sims alongside Bobby Portis in some of those minutes. Like, they have the options to do that. I think we all are hopeful that Bobby Portis's return the final week of the season does not mean that Jericho Sims is exiled out of the rotation. But I think they're in a much better spot. And I suppose it's where it makes it tricky when we say, well, is Bobby Portis really the consistent third guy? And then who's the other role player that's going to step up and score you 9 points, hit 3 threes or something like that over the course of a game to game, perhaps. But I do think they're just in a better spot when we go back to that title year. Bobby Portis wasn't in the rotation a couple of games into that series against the Nets. And maybe it was the injury to Giannis, but he came back in that series against the Hawks. He had some moments in the series against the Suns. That was one of the standouts from that championship, was for all the issues or all the knocks that Bud took. Bud's doing a pretty good job of playing within the flow of the game, making some adjustments and changing his rotations to fit what he's going against. And a lot of times it's easy to blame the coach, or why isn't he doing this? Well, I think last year, we've talked about this before, what am I supposed to do? Like, if it's this machine only accepts dollar bills and you keep giving me quarters, what do you want me to do with this?
Yeah, this Bucks team, again, it's not a perfect roster. It has some flaws on it and things you can question. But ultimately, I think that you have more options to utilize if you need it. We go back to that championship year, because I think it is important to remember that come playoff time, as the rotation shrink, certain guys just might not find themselves in the rotation. It's just about what that game and what that series dictates and what it needs. I mean, even looking over at Cleveland, since the trade deadline when they brought in Hunter now, where it's like, sometimes Jared Allen does not close for the Cavaliers anymore because they insert Hunter into that role. And Jared Allen is somebody who had gotten very used to being in those closing lineups. And it's just what is needed at that time. And being able to have options is a good thing, depending on what the game is calling for in that moment. And I'm really curious to see what the rotations look like once Bobby does come back, knowing that Doc likes a 9-man rotation, and that's in the regular season. We know that rotations can get even tighter come playoff time, but there's something that I really do want to see, that Sims, Bobby Portis front court pairing, just to see what that looks like. We've seen some Sims and Giannis lineup, comparisons together, and the spacing just gets a little bit off. But Sims provides something really valuable to this team with his ability to be able to move defensively, move his feet, switch. And that is something that could prove to be very useful. It's just finding those right combinations along the way, which is, again, part of why the suspension is such a bad time, because it's the last stretch into the playoffs. You're starting to integrate new players. You're understanding what they can do, and not having a crucial bench piece like Bobby Portis can kind of, it forces your hand. But I think it forced the hand of Doc in a way to play Jericho Sims a bit more as someone who he wasn't as familiar with, getting to know him. So it's going to be really fascinating come playoff time, even at the end of the regular season, just seeing what those rotations look like for this team going forward.
Yeah, and we still, I think, want to see more of getting down to just let's play Giannis at the 5 and Kuzma next to the Taurean Prince, whoever it is. But again, one of the things that it got progressively better throughout the course of the season, and we haven't been able to see it for the last 12 games. The Giannis and Bobby Portis minutes, the defense still needs to improve in those. It was up to almost 117, but a very elite offense with those two on the floor together, and the net rating continuing to get better. So I think you want to see more of that as well, just to figure out this versatility that you have, especially with a guy like Kyle Kuzma playing alongside them, or however you choose to fill out the rest of that 5-man grouping. Before this month started, we took a look at the schedule, the road trip, the volume of games, and just what should the expectations be for the Bucks. We're not quite halfway through, but we're almost there. We're 6 games through the 16-game trek here. So we'll revisit what expectations we had and if those need to be updated following this 3-game losing streak coming up after this. This next segment here of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That is 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Picking your favorites is easier now if you got your eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy for you to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. Stay in the action with tournament games happening almost every day. There's always something exciting to bet on, and the FanDuel app, fast and easy, simple to use. When you get win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. 10 games remain in this month of March. The Bucks are 3-3 now. You start with 3 straight wins. You follow it up with 3 straight losses. So of those 10 games, it's an even split, 5 on the road and 5 are at home. You can't even say the road games are more difficult than the home games, because look at the home games, Camille. You got the Pacers, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Knicks are on there. And the other two being tonight against the Lakers, which I suppose we should have lumped in as well, but who knows who they're going to have. And then you wrap up the month, March 30th at home against the Atlanta Hawks. So I believe, I don't remember what you fell on, but I want to say I said 10-6 is what you should be striving for. Okay. So if they're going to meet expectations, they got to go 7-3 the rest of this month. And again, for those, I'm sure all the everydayers know the schedule by like the back of their hand, but tonight against the Lakers, Saturday against the Pacers, Sunday against the Thunder, then 5 straight games out west, Tuesday against the Warriors, next Thursday, 1 week from today, against the Lakers, that's Saturday in Sacramento against the Kings, then Monday, March 24th in Phoenix, Wednesday, March 26th in Denver, and the final 2 games are at home, the 28th and the 30th, the Knicks and the Atlanta Hawks. So the good news in there is the Bucks only have 1 back-to-back in that stretch over the next, 3 weeks, essentially. The bad news is all those teams, the Thunder, the Lakers, if maybe LeBron is back, though I doubt it. The Denver Nuggets on the road. I mean, a big one with the Knicks, sure, but big in terms of a litmus test for you because you're not catching the Knicks. So a very, very challenging schedule, and it's 2 of the 10 games are against teams sub 500. Yeah,
it's tough. So I said 10-6 would be the ideal benchmark, and I was like, man, maybe even 11-5 if we get real lucky here. But knowing that they started the month off 3-3 here, that would mean that they would need to go 7-3 for the rest of the month to hit that 10-16 mark, or 10-6 mark, if my math is correct here. So looking at that, so okay, if you can win all your home games, which includes a back-to-back there with the Pacers and the Thunder, which is going to be tough. And then it's like, can you go on the road trip and, at most lose 3 games? And that feels like it might be a little ambitious at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for the team. But those West Coast road trips have been very difficult for this Bucks team. I mean, playing on the road has been difficult for this Bucks team. We have pointed out time and time again, as you mentioned, everydayers know this, but the Bucks do have the worst road record amongst the playoff teams in the Eastern Conference right now. So it's an area that they have struggled with throughout the season, and somewhere that they need to improve on. Like, if they can go on that road trip and shock me, like get 3-2. At like 3-2, I'll be happy for that 5-game West Coast road trip for this Bucks team. But again, you got to start tonight. You cannot overlook the Lakers. And I know that can be easy when you see who's not playing, but they have to make sure that they get this game. And then come Saturday, and then the Thunder, the next day of a back-to-back. I'm curious to see as well how they play that back-to-back with the Thunder off the heels of that Pacers game. Like, what do you do there?
Yeah, and I don't even think you could say, well, Saturday night gives you your answer. What happens there? I mean, I don't really think so. I think they're still very much focused on the big picture and health. And there's been at least 2 games so far this second half schedule where I've kind of thought, you look at the injury report and just the general feel of what the schedule is, like, I wouldn't be surprised if you just punted this one and rested guys. That is my feeling in that Thunder game, but we'll see. I mean, again, you don't have to deal with a back-to-back again after that until the first week of April, when it's 2 road games. And it was that other Pelicans game that was crammed in there because of the makeup. But the Saturday, April 5th and Sunday, April 6th are your next back-to-back here. And then you got another one that following week, home and road, home against the Pelicans and on the road in Detroit. So it is the end of the line in terms of your back-to-backs for a little bit, but it's still every other day that it's coming at you. And I mean, I don't expect Giannis to play every single game from here on out. Same story for Damian Lillard. So I do kind of wonder, and I'll see if we can read the tea leaves a little bit more when we're at the arena today, if Sunday is going to be let's just regroup and get ready for that trip out west to start a road trip. But yeah, 7-3 is the way you need to go to meet expectations that we set out. And if you lose this game tonight, Camille, I just see a tough path to get to 7-3 in this month. But look, if you do that, you're 43-31 going into April. And as we mentioned, April was always kind of a fluid month where you weren't sure what to expect, and it changed from week to week. You got a game with the Suns, who I mean,
fighting for the 10th seed.
Another loss last night for Phoenix, and as Dallas maybe starts to get healthier, they're already 2 up in the loss column on the Phoenix Suns there. You got the Pelicans twice, who Zion's playing well, but New Orleans, by that point, I wonder if he's even shut down or everything starts to get shut down there for the Pels. And the Miami Heat on the road, the Minnesota Timberwolves at home, and then those 2 games with the Detroit Pistons, which may well be the most important games of the year. And by the way, Bobby Portis will be back for those games. So his suspension ends and he's available starting April 8th. So you'd have those final 4 games, home against the Timberwolves, home against the Pelicans, in Detroit, and then home against the Pistons there. So just continue to weather the storm, and I'll feel really good about hitting that 7-3 mark if you can win these next 2 games.
That's a fact. That's a fact. IO on YouTube mentioned, I actually prefer having a tougher last 10 games. It's a good warm up. And I'm kind of in that same boat with you, because I've said it before, like, I love the competition. That's why playoff time is so fun, because it's like, we know we're getting the best from everybody involved here. Let's roll out the ball and let's see what happens. And I feel like athletes get up for competition as well, just knowing what's at stake, knowing what, it's something that gets your blood flowing. And for this Bucks team, with as up and down as this season has been, starting 2-8, then going 9-1, and then falling back and having like a 5-5 stretch, just the inconsistencies of the season. And we've heard the players mention like that happens over the course of a season. You're going to go on losing streaks. You're going to find ways to bounce back, hopefully, and you continue playing from there. So to end this season with such a tough schedule, like, the fan in me, I look forward to these games. Like, let's see how you match up. Let's see how you continuously stack up. The pace of the games is fast and furious for the Bucks, which that's the part of it that kind of, if anything, quote unquote, worries me. It's just the frequency of the games and just making sure everybody can get through them healthy. Like, I don't want to see Brook Lopez pulling in 35 minutes consistently during these last few games here. But this is the fun part. Like, we're gearing up to the playoffs, which is what you're here for. You're here to try to win a championship. But when you look at who's in front of this Bucks team, like, I don't know how you don't get excited about seeing how they match up in these situations. And going 7-3 down the stretch to hit the Locked On Bucks expectations of a good March. I'll be curious to see if they can do it. Like, we know they have the talent. It's about the execution and the consistency of the way they can play. So it's just continuing to iron out those wrinkles as you march closer to the playoffs. And I'm always here for that.
The last thing here, playoff status has their projections, which takes a number of things into account. Assuming who wins and loses future games with probability. That's really, I think, calculated by team strengths and some of those metrics. The Bucks basically have an equal probability of 4th, 5th, or 6th. 30% to get the 4 seed, 31% to get the 5 seed, 32% to get the 6 seed. So mathematically, the largest chance for the Bucks, or highest probability, is the 6 seed. And they have the Pacers with the greater probability of getting that 4 seed. I didn't check this before that game against Indiana and how much that changed on Tuesday, but it's a 45% chance for the Pacers to get the 4 seed. They have the easiest schedule of those 3 teams. But again, you win that game Saturday night, and I wonder how much that changes, because I think we mentioned it on the last show. Look, that's the other caveat added to this game. And I don't want to make it too much about the Pacers since that's another game away. But if you lose that game, you lose the tiebreaker because of the divisional record. So in that case, you probably are looking at 5. And then who knows, if Detroit continues to linger around, it's going to come down to your final 2 games of the season to figure out who's playing the Pacers and who's playing the Knicks in the first round. That'll do it on today's show. Leave your thoughts on Bobby Portis, how much the Bucks have missed him. What are some of the lineups you're looking forward to seeing when BP makes his return? And we'll get to those in our next couple of shows. Well, the post-game recap of the Bucks and the Lakers, whoever it is on the floor for the Lakers tonight, coming your way tomorrow morning. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.